I realize I got to where I am by people being willing to support first generation students and students from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. I came from a family that um, had no one with a college degree, but very willing to take risks. They migrated to this country when I was 7. And so all through my high school and college, I benefited from people saying, "Oh, she may not have a lot of resources behind her, and she may not have had some of the experiences that other students have had, but she seems like she's willing to work hard and will take a chance on her." So I benefited from scholarships. I benefited from people giving advice and being willing to take a chance on me. And so that's really been important for me always, is to realize that just like you can't judge a book by its cover, you can't judge a student from what you initially see.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this brand new episode of An Ingenious You, the podcast where in this current season we are exploring the lessons and the insights from some of higher education's most transformative women leaders. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Dr. Rhona C. the president of the University of St. Joseph in West Hartford, Connecticut. Dr. Free represents something truly special in higher education leadership. She's an economist who has applied both strategic market analysis and deep social justice values to transform an institution in remarkable ways. As the first non-Catholic president of this Catholic university founded by the Sisters of Mercy, Dr. Free has guided USJ through pivotal changes, including the historic transition to coeducation in 2018 and strategic investments in athletics and academic programs. Her leadership has yielded extraordinary results. Just recently, the Carnegie Foundation and American Council on Education recognized USJ as an opportunity college, one of only 16% of institutions nationwide that successfully combines high access for students from diverse backgrounds with high post-graduation earnings. Remarkably, USJ is the only institution in the state of Connecticut to receive this prestigious designation. What makes Dr. Free's story so compelling is how her personal journey as a first-generation college student and immigrant has shaped her unwavering belief in student potential. Her leadership philosophy centers on what her grandmother taught her, that an ounce of performance is worth a pound of preaching, a principle that has guided her through deliberate, consultative decision-making that consistently puts student success at the center. In our conversation today, you'll hear how Dr. Free has navigated complex institutional changes with what colleagues describe as a calm and steady hand, how she successfully recruited legendary basketball coach Jim Calhoun to jumpstart USJ's athletic transformation, and why she believes effective leadership comes from asking the right questions rather than having all the answers. This is a conversation about strategic thinking, values-based leadership, and the profound impact one leader can have when they combine economic insight with genuine care for student success. Let's dive in. Dr. Free, I am so delighted to welcome you today to the Ingenious You community. So I'd like to begin by talking about your institution, the University of St. Joseph. For those of you who are listening who may not be familiar, how would you describe what makes USJ distinctive and the role it plays in today's higher education landscape?
Well, the university was founded in 1932 by the Sisters of Mercy, and they launched the university at a really challenging time, obviously, Great Depression, but they had such a strong vision and were so determined to make it happen that they were able to overcome really significant odds. And what they wanted to do was create an opportunity for women in this area to pursue degrees that would allow them to become teachers, and that also were liberal arts degrees. At the time, there were not all that many opportunities for women in the area to pursue that kind of a degree. And so that was really the foundation. But the values of the Sisters of Mercy, which really focus on preparing students to meet the needs of society. And at that time, it was primarily through preparing teachers. And then that moved to a broader range of academic disciplines, nursing, social work, and so on. But that foundation from the Sisters of Mercy really continues and affects everything we do. The campus has a really strong culture and feel about it that reflects those Sisters of Mercy values. We really continue to emphasize values and preparing students to meet the needs of society, looking at what does society need, and that may be a workforce need, it may be a social need, but what does society need, and how do we prepare students for that? And so, what's interesting is that the students we attract clearly reflect that. Um, they are students who want to be helpful. They have pretty strong values related to hospitality, which is one of the things that we really emphasize, and equity and social justice. So now we are sort of the typical um, institution, college institution, uh, but really focused more on values and meeting the needs of society than maybe some others.
How big are you these days? What's your enrollment?
We're just about 2,000 and now pretty much equal between graduate and undergraduate. Graduate population includes two groups that are here year round. So we have a doctor of pharmacy program that is on campus year round. It started out in a location in Hartford. We moved it to campus a couple of years ago so that those pharmacy students could interact more fully with all of the students in our other healthcare programs. The physician assistant studies program is on campus year round. And so there are graduate students here all the time, which is just terrific. And then the undergraduate students now, since we became coeducational in 2018, the undergraduate population is just about 1/3 male, and most of them live on campus. So it feels like a pretty traditional undergraduate campus, New England setting, big brick buildings, big lawns, and
Yeah, indeed. It really is a hidden gem in the greater Hartford. But but for now, what I'd like to ask you about is the guiding vision that was in your mind as you have led the institution through so much transformation. What else has guided your vision and decision making across these different periods of transformation?
well, what has been really key for me is that I realize I got to where I am by people being willing to support first generation students and students from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. So I came from a family that um, had no one with a college degree, but very willing to take risks. They migrated to this country when I was 7. And so all through my high school and college, I benefited from people saying, "Oh, she may not have a lot of resources behind her, and she may not have had some of the experiences that other students have had, but she seems like she's willing to work hard and will take a chance on her." So I benefited from scholarships. I benefited from people giving advice that was really valuable and being willing to take a chance on me. And so that's really been important for me always, is to realize that just like you can't judge a book by its cover, you can't judge a student from what you initially see. And that if you have any question about a student, it's always better to bet on the student and assume that they will use whatever resources and capacities and abilities they have to make the best of themselves. Encouraging students who were struggling financially and, just demonstrating through my efforts for them that I really believed in their success. And just been incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Now, you came to USJ from a public secular university, Eastern Connecticut. where you had been for a very long time. I didn't realize that you had started teaching there in the early 90s. So you are the first non-Catholic president there, and yet I have read that you've said that the mercy values resonate with you deeply. So can you say a little bit more about what it is that drew you in to this presidency and how those values have shaped your approach to leadership?
Well, I was in graduate school at the University of Notre Dame, so I was familiar with what a Catholic institution felt like. And I realized there that most Catholic institutions, most Catholic colleges and universities. So I fit in just fine at the University of Notre Dame. One of my fondest memories of there was that I had two babies when I was there. And so I would be out at all hours walking them, in strollers around campus. And I would see Father Ted Hesburgh, who was just the most wonderful president. And we would stroll along at night, and he was just such a kind, gentle person who was tremendously committed to peace and to social justice. He was very active in the anti-Vietnam War movement. And then when I read about the University of St. Joseph and the Sisters of Mercy, I was really confident that I could fit in here and that they wouldn't be compromising too much in the sense of what they wanted from a leader of this institution. The sisters are very progressive. They're very committed to their critical concerns. And those were critical concerns that had always been important to me: diversity, inclusion, women, peace, earth. And so it was very comfortable. I think what I have come to appreciate that was a little bit different is that now I understand how the religious rituals and traditions really reinforce those values, at least at this institution. So there's no conflict. So it's just been a very good fit, very comfortable fit. And I think all the things that they value and the things that I value are shared.
That's a wonderful thing to be able to say, lean back on as a leader. Now, when the University of St. Joseph invited Father James Martin to speak in 2018, I'm told that the decision sparked public controversy and a large petition. So I'm curious, as the president, how did you approach that decision? What kinds of things did you consider in determining how the university should respond?
Well, I realized that I needed to talk to the Sisters of Mercy and ensure that they would be comfortable with it. And they were thrilled with the suggestion. Wouldn't want to say that every Sister of Mercy has exactly the same view, but the sisters that we were affiliated with at the time, either through board membership or who were working at the university, they were very comfortable with it. And I actually called the Archbishop and told the Archbishop that Father Martin would be coming and invited him. And he was relatively conservative um, and in his views. And yet he didn't say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." He was open and said he wouldn't be able to come, but that he would send a few members of his staff to come. And they came and were open and welcoming as well. So it could have been a problem, but I think by making sure that we consulted everybody ahead of time, understood their perspective, it went just fine.
Well, and that's
It was wonderful to have him here. He's just a terrific person.
how you then have to enact different things and deal with decisions on the campus. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you have been described as someone who leads with a calm and steady hand, even in moments of pressure or controversy. I'm curious where you think that clarity and composure comes from and how it has helped you as you've navigated challenging moments as a university leader.
Well, I think that comes from the family that I grew up in. You shouldn't have an overblown sense of self-importance, that you should be self-aware, but you shouldn't be self-conscious, and that you understand that each of us is just a very small cog in a very big wheel, and you certainly should be yourself. I think I'm probably not a person well suited to being a surgeon or an occupation where when you do make a mistake, it's got a significant negative impact on others. But in what I do, I try to be thoughtful. And I think one thing that does help is that for the most part, in this job, you can take your time to make decisions. And so that's something that I am very deliberate about, is making sure that if there is a decision, I approach it with calm and try to seek advice, guidance, and then with integrity, implement whatever a decision is, but realizing that having done everything I could to weigh up the impact of different outcomes. So I think it just comes from that sense that you need to take your time, be deliberate, seek advice, get counsel from those who you respect and admire.
Indeed, that's great advice and wisdom for anybody aspiring to leadership, and particularly the highest levels of leadership. Because as you know, the jobs have become increasingly more challenging. Over the course of your presidency, you have led a wide range of institutional changes. I would love to know, as you look back at all of these different things that have happened, which changes do you feel have had the most significant impact and why?
Well, maybe an indicator of what's been most significant is that a few weeks ago, the Carnegie Foundation and the American Council on Education released a list of institutions in the country that they called opportunity colleges. And these are colleges that have a record of taking in students who come from a range of socioeconomic backgrounds. And then after they graduate, they go into occupations where they have high earnings, and they actually have the records of the earnings of each of these students and their socioeconomic background. So the Carnegie Foundation and ACE identified 16% of the colleges and universities in the country that they said are these high access, high earnings colleges. And in Connecticut, there's only one, and it's USJ. So I think that is sort of a symbol of the changes that we've made over the last 10 years that have been aimed at making sure we bring in students who have the ability to succeed here. And that ability doesn't have anything to do with their socioeconomic background. It's a whole range of factors. But we bring in students from all sorts of backgrounds who have the potential to be successful. And I think that's one of the things that we're good at, is figuring out based on a student's record who has the potential to be successful. We don't ever want to admit a student who's going to borrow or use savings, family's resources to pay for tuition and then not graduate. So we've been good at figuring out who's going to be successful, getting them the resources that they need. And we've done a lot of innovations in the last 10 years to do that. And then prepare them for careers where they will have relatively high earnings. So, I mean, that for me, that's sort of the personal goal, is to help students succeed. We realize that there's much more to success than earnings after you graduate, and that college should be a growth experience, a fulfilling experience. It shouldn't just be about earnings, it should be about intellectual stimulation. But it's important to families that students graduate and be able to go out and repay their loans, build a solid economic future. And so I think we've made a lot of changes that have really reinforced that. So, for example, we've started a lot of academic programs that meet workforce needs, and so that when students graduate, they have a range of high paying careers that they can enter immediately, where they don't have to have a graduate degree. They can go right into those careers. And we've created a lot of new scholarship programs that have been funded by generous donors, and that's been important. So, for example, we have a Catholic Promise program, which is a scholarship for students who go to Catholic high school for 4 years. And then it's $25,000 a year guaranteed at St. Joe's. So that gives an opportunity to a lot of families who value the type of education and environment that we have here at St. Joe's, but who might otherwise have thought that they couldn't afford it. Um, and it's been funded by people who share those same values. They want to create opportunities for students who they don't. I mean, there's no criteria at all about being Catholic. It's just that they went to Catholic high school, and so it really reinforces the sense that this is an institution with values, and that's been an important emphasis over the last 10 years.
Yeah, well, congratulations. That's a profound recognition. And
It-
yeah, and based on all you've just told me about yourself, I can see how that would be personally meaningful to you
yeah.
as a leader. Yeah. Wow, that's terrific. Well, the shift to coeducation in 2018 was a pivotal moment for your institution. Can you tell us a little bit about how that decision came about and what the impact has been?
Yeah, the possibility of becoming co-educational had been considered several times before I got here by prior presidents with prior boards of trustees. And every time they had considered it, they had come to the conclusion that it wasn't the right time. And so when I came, I didn't take the job with the idea that this is what was going to happen. But after being here for about a year, I realized that it probably was something that we needed to reconsider. And that was for a couple of reasons. I mean, there's some data that show that being a single sex institution is tough. The College Board, which administers the SATs, runs a survey of students who take the SATs. And one of the questions on the survey was, would you consider going to a single sex college? And only 2% of respondents said they would consider that. So that meant that right away, we were really giving away 98% of the students who were going to go to college. The remaining 2% are a wonderful 2%. Only half of them would have been women because the other half would have been males considering going to male-only institutions. So it was just, that was really telling. And we know that there are some very well endowed women's colleges with international reputations, and they will probably thrive as women's institutions. And it's wonderful that they can remain as women's institutions. But we realized that for St. Joe's, it was something that we needed to consider looking at coeducation. So, with some of that data in hand, we brought in many groups of alumni, students, community members, current students to ask them what they thought. And there were definitely some people who thought we needed to remain a women's only institution. But the majority felt that given the evidence, the time was right. And that if we didn't make a transition, we would have difficulty generating the enrollment and revenues that we needed in order to provide the opportunities that we wanted to provide for every student, especially the women students. So, um, we made the case that we would be able to start many more majors that women could pursue at St. Joe's if we were coeducational, that we just couldn't launch with the relatively small enrollment that was generated with just women on campus. So those women would have more opportunities academically, they'd have more opportunities athletically. And so after, a lot of consultation, patient listening. We did numerous surveys. We had a board meeting in the summer where the decision would be made. And before the meeting, we recorded a video of the board chair announcing that the decision was to continue as a women's institution, and another video saying that there had been a change. So we went into the retreat with, both options being quite feasible, and we were prepared to go forward, whatever the outcome was. But at the board meeting, it became really apparent that the board members who had looked at a lot of data, they participated in a lot of meetings ahead of time, that they were ready to make the decision to become coeducational. So it ended up being not very controversial. It was pretty straightforward to get at the decision.
You have the experience. You've completed most of the coursework in a doctoral program, but you have not completed that dissertation. Now you have a path to leave your ABD, that's all but dissertation status, behind with Bay Path University. Our innovative Doctor of Education and Educational Leadership ABD degree completion program makes it easier than ever for qualified candidates to finish what you started. Our one-of-a-kind program builds on your previous experience with coursework designed to strengthen your innovative leadership mindset and gain the skill set you need to lead and to transform educational institutions for the 21st century. The coursework for the ABD degree completion program is entirely online and can be completed in well under 2 years. What's more, you will have an abundance of support along the way, from your dedicated faculty advisor to your small dissertation seminar group of classmates with whom you will meet regularly for dissertation advisement and much needed encouragement. With Bay Path University, there's no reason to wait any longer. Trade up from ABD to EDD and take your place among the next generation of educational leaders. For more information, visit our website at baypath.edu/EDD. Don't wait a minute longer. Make today the day you finish what you started.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting having both videos prepared ahead of time and not really knowing until you got to the end of the meeting. So how would you describe the impact? So you now have been co-ed for seven years, going on 8 years.
Yeah.
What has changed?
Once we made the decision, we delayed the actual change for a year because we thought we needed a year to prepare so that we could make this transition well. And so over that year, I talked to a lot of presidents from other campuses that had gone through the co-education process to get their advice and learned a lot. They were all really helpful. And that's one of the nice things about this job is that although presidents are competing with each other in some ways for students, in most ways, it's really a nice group of people who are very supportive of one another. So I got a lot of good advice. And one of the pieces of advice was that to make the transition successful, we would need to put a lot into athletics. Um, and so I thought about that a lot, and I had a couple of perspectives on that from my own experience. So the first was I went to Sarah Lawrence College, which had become co-educational several years before I got there, but they had no sports, and it really was not a co-educational institution. They would admit males, and there were a few males there, but it was really a women's only institution at that point. It had the culture, it had the feeling of being a women's college, and that was fine. But I realized that if you were going to go co-educational, you couldn't do it just a little bit at a time. You had to make a big impact and bring in a really critical mass of male students right away. And then the other thing that uh, gave me perspective on that is that having gone to the University of Notre Dame, which has tremendous academics, but also really wonderful athletics, and I'd met some really gifted students there. As a graduate student, I did a lot of tutoring of undergraduates. And I realized that, these wonderful, nationally known football players weren't just gifted athletically, they were really smart. So there's no necessarily conflict between athletics and academics. They are absolutely complementary and reinforce each other. So that was a perspective. And then also my husband worked at the University of Connecticut for many years, where part of what changed the reputation of UConn from being a sort of regularly viewed small regional, although it was an R1 institution, a state flagship, it wasn't viewed as being equivalent to some of the other state flagships until basketball. Basketball really turned it around. So those were good lessons for me. And so one of the big changes that we made right away was to put a lot of emphasis on athletics. So over that year before, when we delayed the actual implementation, We hired coaches of men's teams. We made all the arrangements that needed to be made to launch those men's teams with the NCAA and our athletic conference. So that was a big part of making the transition successful. And that's affected the institution up through this point. So there were sports here when we were a women's institution, but now we have really wide range of sports, very committed to them. And I think it shows in the campus culture and the feel of the campus. We put a lot into facilities. So that draws in a different population of students. But I think, partly because of this perspective that academics and athletics don't compete with each other, they're complementary. In most cases, gifted athletes are gifted students as well. It helped us raise the expectations for everything that we do here. So I think, some of the biggest changes on the campus are this changed feel that it's a much more campus focusing on fitness, wellness, action, activity, and raised expectations for everybody in everything that we do, especially with athletics, but equally with academics, that you can raise your expectations. So the campus is a lot busier now. It's much livelier. When I came, there were so few students interested in living on campus that we had 2 residence halls that were actually closed. Now we don't have enough beds for the students who want to live on campus, so we've leased some off-campus housing so they can be as close as possible to living on campus. So it's a very much changed feel, and I think higher level of expectations. And then as we get hope from the very beginning of the transition, we've been able to provide more opportunities to all students. So a much broader range of academic majors than before.
Yeah, that's a great story. And for those who don't know, I can remember when I read in the newspaper about your successfully recruiting the Yukon retired basketball coach, Jim Calhoun, to join you there at USJ. And I remember thinking, whoa, how in the world did you convince him to join you? Because that was a powerful way to jumpstart your athletic investment. I am curious how, what you said to get him to come on board.
Well, we our athletic director at the time and I uh, agreed that we needed to do something that would create a buzz of activity and conversation about USJ becoming coeducational. So I thought, well, how do you do that? And so he had known Coach Calhoun before, and he said, well, maybe Coach would have some ex-players that he would recommend as potential coaches. I thought that was a great idea. So why don't you call him and ask him if he has any thoughts on that? And so the athletic director did. And Coach Calhoun said, well, before he rec someone, he'd like to meet me and he'd like to meet the board chair because, he's very protective of his players. He certainly didn't want to recommend them to do something that he didn't think would be wise. So he came to campus and the 4 of us met, the athletic director, Bill Cardarelli, and the board chair, who at the time was Skip Gengras, and me and Coach Calhoun. And we had a lovely conversation where I don't think we ever actually talked about other potential coaches, his retired players. He talked about them coming as a coach. He just wanted to talk about his players, which I don't know if you've ever met him, but however the conversation starts, he will pretty quickly shift it to talking about his players, either current players or past players. Still, he'll talk about his family, but he'll talk a lot about his players. And that's what he did. And so we had a lovely conversation. At the end of it, I thought, well, I don't know that we got much out of that. I learned a lot about his past players, but I'm not sure I learned all that much about who could be a potential coach. But it was a nice time. And then the next day, he called the athletic director to say he'd be interested in doing it himself. And I think it's just that he missed creating relationships with players. He missed the fun of coaching, the excitement, and was just ready to get back into it at a level that didn't require so much travel, allowed him to spend the time with his family that he wanted. And that would also be at an institution where the focus was on students as student athletes. And so he right away said, this is what we're going to need to do if we want to be successful. And it was a little bit intimidating for me. He said, you're going to need a new facility and you're going to need more activities for students. And yet we were able to, with his support and the support of a lot of other donors and helpers, create the facilities and bring in just tremendously talented student athletes. And we're lucky Coach is still involved. He's still got his office on campus. He's here every week and provides good advice, helps with recruiting. But again, has always really emphasized that basketball, especially at Division III, is not preparing for a career in basketball. It's preparing for careers in a range of occupations, whatever a student wants to do, but learning about work ethic, planning, team skills, and really setting the bar high for yourself and helping others meet a high bar.
Yeah, well, what a coup. And he obviously contributed a lot to the development of the institution at a critical point. But it sounds like he also has taken away a lot in terms of his own life and where he was career wise. So it's a great match, perhaps. Both.
Yeah.
So now,
And I hope he's taken away a lot from it and still does. I think he continues to enjoy meeting with players that he coached here, meeting with players that he coached at UConn. But I think he loves being around young people. And I think they're part of what keeps him so young.
yeah, indeed. Now, your academic background is in economics, and you taught in the field for many, many years. How did that perspective, that disciplinary perspective, shape the way you think about institutional viability and strategy, especially in a time when so many colleges are facing financial pressures and everything that goes along with that?
Yeah, so I studied economics as an undergraduate, and it was one type of economics. And then as a graduate student, it was really different. As an undergraduate, I studied with faculty who would have been thought at the time as being radical economists. So FDR's grandson, Frank Roosevelt, was a wonderful economist, but doesn't have the traditional economics perspective. And so after spending a lot of time in his classes, that's really what gave me my focus and interest in social justice and trying to understand how institutions can limit opportunity or create opportunity, and how the happiest and most thriving economies are one that have a lot of equality. The most challenged economies and countries are ones with tremendous inequality. So my undergraduate training in economics is really focused on that, how to create more equitable and equal outcomes, and how that is enhanced through social justice and opportunities. And then I went to graduate school where there was a different focus at the University of Notre Dame. There was clearly an emphasis on social justice, but it was also the more traditional economics training, which focuses on really understanding behaviors about maximization, that corporations are maximizing profit, individuals are maximizing their own personal well-being. And so I think as in a job like this in an institution, what you have to try to do is be clear about what your goal is, and then try to understand how people's behaviors can help the institution to achieve the goal. We don't have a goal of maximizing profit, but clearly we have to pay our bills. And so there's a lot of understanding of economics behind decisions about what can we do to attract students, to attract support of employers, and then make decisions that will contribute to the long-term financial stability of the institution. So I think it's, and a lot of it goes back to this being really deliberate about decision making, trying to gather evidence, and then weighing it all out, being thoughtful about what is motivating people. Why do they make the decisions that they make?
I can see that coming through as you describe how you've made the decisions there as a president. So it's really interesting to hear those two threads in terms of your own training and how they come together to inform the way you think about the university as an organization and how to promote well-being and social justice and all of that. So thank you for sharing that. Now, I want to get a little bit personal here in the last few minutes that we have. In other interviews, you have quoted your grandmother's adage of an ounce of performance is worth a pound of preaching. I love that. So what does that mean, though? And what does it mean to you?
I mean, I suppose literally it just means you could talk is cheap. Um, it's easy to say what you're going to do, but it doesn't matter what you say you're going to do. It's really the results that count. Um, and that's been obviously something that sort of guided me all along. I'm not a naturally outgoing person, so it's sort of been easy for me not to do the preaching part. I think it would be easy for me to say what I believe or what the institution believes and put that in writing. But it's really got to be, what does the institution do? So not just me personally, but leading the institution. What do we make the institution do that matches our mission statement? We say that we provide an education for a diverse population that prepares students for careers that meet the needs of society. Well, it's easy to say that, but what is important is for me to create an institution that provides those opportunities for this diverse population from a wide range of backgrounds with a wide range of abilities and interests. So create that environment where they can be successful, provide them with the resources where they can be successful, and also incorporate all the values that we've talked about. Don't talk too much about what you're going to do, just do it.
So, your job, presidential leadership generally, remains one of the most challenging positions. So, how do you stay grounded and resilient through demanding and the uncertain times that we're living in?
The emphasis on consultation and thoughtful deliberation is helpful. We're going to be deliberate. But I'm fortunate to also have a family that I rely on a lot. So my husband has been in higher ed all his life, all his working life. And then so I, get his thoughts on things a lot. But my children as well, they know me well. So I think they're very good at helping me figure out when I'm being too cautious with something, just because my nature is to be cautious. And so they'll tell me that. So when I have a difficult decision, I ask them, what do they think? And they'll be honest. And I think for me, that's a tremendous asset, is to be able to rely on people who I know have no interest other than what they think is the right thing for me to do. There, no hidden agenda there. And so that's I think a real asset. I realize not everyone has that. They don't have people who they can rely on completely. And so that's just reassuring for me. And then I suppose ultimately I know that whatever decision I make, I really have made it with the right goal in mind. And if it works out, that's great. If it doesn't work out, I accept the consequences.
What do you do to get yourself out of the office? I mean, do you have some hobbies or practices or things that totally take your mind off of the work?
So I run every day. And that to me is something that's really critical. I don't feel good if I don't run, but when I'm running, I'm usually thinking about work, but it helps me think things through. It's an hour every morning where I know that I don't have other demands on my time. This is what I'll be doing, and I have a long time to think through a problem if it's a one that requires that. So I do that. Very simple. I have very simple pleasures. So running, gardening, and then again, just family and reading. I'm an avid reader of fiction.
Okay, running is a great practice. So it's obviously serving you very well. So, what advice would you give to women who aspire to senior leadership roles in higher ed? And specifically, what should they know as they prepare? And are there some leadership lessons you've learned that you would want to be sure to pass along?
Well, I do think that it's important for people to try to assess what institution might be a good match for them. And, I would not be well suited to lead an institution that was focused in the arts, for example, because I just don't have a lot of strength there. An institution that was in a very conservative environment would be a challenge for me. So I think it's important for people to assess what is a good fit in terms of personality and culture in making a decision about where to be, whether it's for women or for men to realize that we have a tremendous privilege in being able to create opportunities for others. So at an institution like St. Joe's, it's an opportunity for students to prepare for careers that meet the needs of society. Presidents of Research One institutions, they have an opportunity to create they have an opportunity to create an environment where scientists and other scholars can do path-breaking research. So it's just a real privilege that we have to lead institutions where we can create environments where others can achieve their goals and excel, whatever those are. So whether it's an arts institution, an institution that focuses on the sciences, or one like here where we're preparing students for careers in healthcare and education and social work, business, it's just a real privilege to be able to create those opportunities for others. And it's really fulfilling when we get to see that. To this day, I'm probably like every teacher or administrator in education. I can meet students who I taught 40 years ago. They will, recognize me, and I will often recognize them, and they'll tell me what they've done. It's just so wonderful to realize that, I may have played a small, tiny part in helping them to achieve what they wanted to achieve, helping to make sure that they have the resources that they need to do that. So it's just a tremendous privilege.
Yeah, and I can see it in your smile. That this is what keeps you going, perhaps. So now, Rhona, we've come to the end of our time. We have a signature question we ask of every guest who comes on the podcast. And so we're going to end with this question. As a woman leading in higher education today, what do you see as your most meaningful contribution to the future of the field? And how do you hope your leadership at USJ will inspire other women leaders?
I hope that what can be seen from the experience at St. Joe's is that there's a way to incorporate lots of different elements of people's lives into futures of success. So whether someone is a brilliant student and a moderate athlete, or a brilliant athlete and just an okay student, whether they're committed to the arts or other activities, that you can mold those into successful and enjoyable lives and careers. And at colleges and universities, you can create environments to really nurture that. So you help students become well-rounded individuals. So I think that's happened here at St. Joe's, partly through the transition to coeducation, partly through building up athletics and maintaining a commitment to the arts. Just creating this sense that what we want to do in college is help students become well-rounded and prepare for meaningful lives.
Yeah. Well, Rhona, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation and hearing your insights and your wisdom on all of these topics. So I wish you all the best in the new academic year ahead. And thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think you asked such wonderful questions. It really helped me to think through some things that I hadn't seriously thought about before. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on today's Ingenious You episode. A very big thank you for tuning in and sharing this time with us. Don't forget to stay in the loop with our Center for Higher Education Leadership and Innovative Practice, the hub that brings this podcast to life. CHLUP is also behind the free monthly webinars on all things cutting edge in higher ed and offers some terrific certificate programs to boot. Have you checked out our YouTube channel yet? It's where the magic of our top-rated episodes from past seasons comes alive with video interviews. Hit that subscribe button so you're always in the know with our latest, greatest content. Like what you heard? Take a moment to rate and review Ingenious You on your podcast platform of choice. Spread the word to your friends and colleagues and invite them to join our Ingenious You circle. Until next time, keep innovating, keep inspiring, and keep making a difference. Stay safe, stay connected, and above all, stay ingenious.